Now, you want to make sure that you measure because every printer is different. So the colored part of this is going to be 12 inches. That's one direction. And I'm 12 inches this way. So I should be okay. Okay, that's an important step. Okay, now one thing, people always wonder what size pieces you need for fabric. Okay, so I like to kind of measure. So I know that I'm gonna need 1/4 inch on that side. The yellow is kind of the biggest area. Okay, so I'm gonna need at least a 5.5 inch strip to cover that area. And it should be, and we're gonna cover both of the, it has to cover both of the seam allowances. All right, so that piece is almost 18 inches long, okay? So I need it to be about 5.5, 6 inches by 18 inches long for that one piece. Everything else, even if you had pieces that size, that's great, or they can be smaller. Okay, so the most confusing part about foundation paper piecing is that you are going to be looking at this side and you are going to be sewing on these lines, but your fabric is actually going to be on the back. Okay, so we are going to do the purple and the dark blue first. So B1 and B2. Now this paper is a little bit tricky because you can't see through it very well. So if I were a brand new quilter, I'm looking for a pen here in my mess, I would probably, this is one great trick that you can do that will really help you, is just folding it on the line. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, but now I can see where the line is. So my purple will go down first because that's B1. So, and I want it to be, if that's my line, I'm gonna need it to be about 1/4 inch over. And then I'm gonna put my blue on it. Okay, now I need to make sure that my blue is covering where my blue is actually going to be. So I can actually come up this way quite a bit, and I probably should, because the bottom of my block is right there. Okay, so these two pieces need to be right there. Now, pinning is a great idea because things slide around. So I'm not pinning exactly where I'm sewing. I'm just pinning back here to kind of hold things in place. Just a couple of little pins. Okay, now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to turn it over and I am going to stitch from that point to that point. All right, I'll be right back. All right, so I sewed, and this is where we hope that things actually cover. And I'm just going to press that down. Okay, so that's going to be just great. So now let's look at where our next line is. Okay, so we're going to fold on our next line. I find that folding really kind of helps me visualize things. All right, so now we're looking for this, so that wedge piece right there is actually the blue. Okay, and we have it all covered. Whew. Now, one thing I like to do is, because obviously I don't need this much, so I'm going to fold this back. And I have what is called an add a quarter ruler. And so what I do is I put that down and I am going to trim this off. So now I don't have so much bulk I'm working with. All right, now the next color is going to be light blue. So we want the light blue to come down. It's going to be right around here. That'll be great. So if we just put it there and come up, I'm going to trim this off. I always err on the side of caution when I'm doing this because I've had too many times where I've messed up. Okay, so now I'm just going to pin this so it doesn't slide. All right, now I'm only sewing to the corner here, but I did sew off the edge here and I will sew off the edge there. But in the corner, I don't want to have any extra crazy bulk in my seam allowance. Okay, so I'm going to start right here and I'm going to sew out. If I fold this back, I can fold this now. It's folding right on my stitch seam. I don't need to have any extra here, so I'm going to use my add a quarter ruler. Now, two things here. First of all, these are not cutting rulers, okay? Don't use them that way. Bad things happen. The second thing is I am using very tiny stitches. I think they're like 2.3 on my Bernina. All right, so now you can really see the blue wedge now. All right, so now we're worried about our green wedge. So now I obviously need some more tape because that's just making life difficult for me. So if I put this down, I want to fold on my green line, and I want to do it so I can see what I'm doing, so I'll flip it over. There is a lot of flipping back and forth when you're doing foundation paper piecing. Okay, I'm getting as close as I can. Okay, all right, so now I can see where my line is. Now, I know that if I fold this back again now, I'm only going to need about 1/4 inch past that light blue. So let's get that trimmed off. All right, that also kind of helps me line up my next color, which is green. All right. So, okay, now this is not a straight cut. It's a brand new bolt of fabric, so the end wasn't straight. Alrighty. I am going to just put a couple pins in. Ah, those critters are harder to pick up than they look. Ouch. Okay, now I am sewing along this line from this point just off. All right, so I have quite a bit of extra. I want to make sure that I don't cut this. I only want to cut that seam allowance off. Okay, so it's folded back. We'll use my ruler. You can cut against, so this has a little edge and it goes right up against the paper. It kind of nests right in there. Just don't cut on the skinny side, that's what I meant. Alrighty. So now we are almost done with this half. So what we need to do now is we're going to trim along our cut lines. You want to make sure everything's flat underneath. Okay, so, oh boy. Okay, I don't really know how that happened, but these things do happen. Okay, so let me show you a trick. And nobody will ever, okay, you guys are gonna know. These things happen, they really do. But if I just cut a little piece of green, I am gonna put it here, and I'm gonna stitch a line. So I'm making myself a line. All right, so, and I can just look at this side of the fabric if I want and stitch along there. I'm just gonna stitch a straight line that will stitch there. And yeah, it's not the greatest solution. I could unpick this, but you know what? This is great because these things really do happen. Sometimes you accidentally clip a corner. So let me show you what I'll do. Okay, so I just sewed a little piece on. I do want to clip the seam allowance. Okay, so that's not where I made my mistake. I must have cut it when I was actually trimming my edges. So that's when to be careful. Let me press this down quick so it's nice and flat. Okay, and then I'm just gonna okay, you know what? In the long range of things, nobody's really gonna even notice that. So now I'm gonna do the exact same thing with this piece. I'm not talking right now, so you can come in. Okay, these three pieces are sewn down. Now we just want to trim it, but we want to make sure everything's flat so we don't have the problem we had last time. So now we just put these two pieces together. Okay. Okay, so I didn't do a great job cutting on this. I think I'm going to clean that up just a little bit. Let's see what's going on there. Okay, so it's probably just not pinned perfectly straightly, so, but we're gonna go for it. Okay, so we want, check the back side. Those go like that. Now, since I know I have a little bit of weirdness here, I'm going to use this nice straight line on this side. All right. So now it's a little stiff. So this is where we pull off our paper. And there it is. Okay, now, you still may need to do a little bit of squaring up because fabric is fluid. Okay, but nice easy lines. And now we'll do the next part. Okay, so I have some black fabric and I have applied Heat and Bond. And you have a couple of choices here. So this is our quarter note. If we cut it out this way, it would be backwards, right? Because the adhesive would be in the wrong place, okay? So you have a choice. You can either flip it, if you can see well enough so that you can cut that way, that's great. Or, for most of us, it's easier to think about that way. But you have to make sure it's actually on the Heat and Bond. Okay, so this would be my preferred method, is that I would go ahead and pin it on right here. I can feel the Heat and Bond underneath. I think you'll be able to too. And now I'm just going to cut this out. Okay, I got my note cut out. And now that it's cut out, I like to leave the paper on because it kind of stabilizes things. All right, and we place this where we want it. Okay. All right, now what we're going to do is satin stitch around the edges.